Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hey there, and a good morning at ya. Good morning. With the polar vortex again threatening to drop down upon us. I know you were wearing shorts this weekend, but... oh, God. Well, we're close. We are so close. It's almost March. That's just daylight savings time starts in less than 2 weeks. Or in essentially 2 weeks. And if that ain't a harbinger of spring, I don't know what is. So, programming note for today. I will be joined later in the program by a woman who has the courage to attempt to do something that we would all be extremely in her debt for doing, and that is knocking off Congressman Keith Rothfus. So we will be talking to Democrat Aaron McClellan, who is taking on that tough assignment, given the demographics of the district, given the force of incumbency. But she's an impressive candidate, and you're going to meet her. And I would really appreciate if any of you are in that district, if you would take part. You can email questions in for her, or certainly give us a call. Phone number right there, 412-316-3381. And email Lynn, Lynn, at pghcitypaper.com. So, the Olympics are over and nobody died, okay? There were no... So you think of all that exhaustive coverage of how you were likely to be blown to pieces if you went anywhere near the Sochi Olympics. So the Russians pulled off that. And then those initial reports about, doorknobs and toilets and water and things, which always struck me as a little obnoxious. They were quickly forgotten in what looked to be a pretty successful Olympics for Vlad. So, boy, he was having a lot of cognitive dissonance yesterday. In one side, he was triumphant on the world stage, and on the other side, he was a loser on the world stage, of course, talking about Ukraine. It is Ukraine, isn't it? It's not the Ukraine. Why do people keep saying the Ukraine? I know we used to say that, but is that the case? I don't know. It's just Ukraine, if you ask me. So, we got some stuff here. I was talking the other day about why I do appreciate the winter, and I talked about the quietness of winter, the beauty, the stark beauty of winter. And if you can get yourself to, stop focusing on the temperature and instead look at so much, especially when there's snow, as snow makes things so beautiful. So I was thrilled to see that a reporter for the New York Times wrote a piece that was covered in the Sunday paper. And this reporter, a gentleman named Guy Trebay, because of the winter, he saw something he had never seen before, even though he lives right there. It's right in front of his face, and he doesn't see it until winter and snow. And I'll tell you, I'm going to make a point of seeing this next time I go to New York City. He said he was standing at 110th Street and 5th Avenue. And And the snow was falling, and he saw for the first time this glorious tunnel created by elm trees planted by, who was the genius behind Central Park? Olmsted. His name was Olmsted. And those trees were planted as saplings, American elms, planted as saplings in the 1800s. And there's one on each side of a big sidewalk. And they've grown so that they create this arch, a 2.5 mile glorious arch. You don't notice it in the summer because there's leaves. And there's just a lot of leaves. That's nice too. But when those leaves fall, and in the winter, those the beautiful black skeletons of those trees, you can see the majestic, glorious beauty. And he said, here is a civic treasure. And people who have walked under it for decades don't even see it, aren't even conscious of its existence. A 2.5 mile tunnel formed by American elms along Fifth Avenue, a continuous stand of these old, beautiful trees that may well be the longest such stand in the world. Saplings planted in the 1860s. And it's fascinating, and winter makes us look at things that we otherwise don't. The bones of trees, for one thing, and the glorious beauty of them. And our incuriosity about such beauty is noted by folks who love trees. Here's a gentleman who wrote a book about trees, and especially American elms, and he said, we know where our trash goes, we know what goes into our foods, we're much more aware of the environment than we ever were, and yet the trees in front of our very faces, in front of our homes, are curiously invisible to us. And I think that is so true, and I want to tell you all to look at a tree today, to appreciate the trees. Look at them. They're just glorious without their leaves. They're glorious with their leaves, but they're extraordinary without them. So do that. Obit of the day, it's a no-brainer. 110 years old. Survivor of the Holocaust. A woman who perhaps you have seen documentaries on her. I know I've seen pieces on her. There is a film documentary, I guess it's a short doc that is up for an Academy Award next month. It's about her. Unfortunately, she won't live to see whether or not she wins the Academy Award. Alice Herz-Sommer. She died in London yesterday, 110 years old. She's the woman who made it through the Holocaust because she was a good pianist. And so when she was sent off to Theresienstadt, which was the concentration camp that the Nazis always ushered the Red Cross to and other humanitarian organizations to show, see, look how lovely this really is. Do you see? We even have, our inmates have a symphony. They perform concerts for the other prisoners and plays. Look at this. Have you ever seen anything so lovely? And so there she was in Theresienstadt. And because of her musical skills, she made it out. And the music kept her alive. And kept some of the others there alive too, no doubt. But she continued her playing until the end. And the amazing thing about her, though, and she got her son through. Her son was with her. She lost most of the rest of her family. But that she got out and was filled with life. And so much life that it took her past this century mark and gave her another decade. What an amazing woman. Always a smile on her face. She said she smiled in the concentration camp all the time because of the music. When you see what it takes sometimes to be a survivor, you realize that you either have that kind of a mindset or you don't. And I'll tell you right now, I do not. I would not. She's definitely a half full kind of a person. I mean, well over 30,000 people died in the camp she was in. A lot of others who were there were moved through Theresienstadt over to Auschwitz. Another 80, 90,000 where they died. And she and her son were among fewer than 20,000 who were still alive when the Soviet army liberated that camp in May of 45. What a great life. Amazing. This is my favorite story of the weekend. You know, around here, there are folks, and I think the Post-Gazette had a pretty interesting article about some people who live near Trax Farms. And there's a fracking well on Trax Farms now. And some of them have had to leave their homes. They simply cannot tolerate the smell, the noise, all of that. And so you can see how fracking, while it obviously is providing jobs and energy, and as Range Resources likes to remind us, drilling is only the beginning. I find that so sinister. They say it with such pride, like that's supposed to make us think, oh, I can't wait till tomorrow. What else? Drilling is only the beginning. I think, yeah, what are you going to do to us next? That's what I think. But what's fascinating here is the CEO of ExxonMobil. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to find a much larger oil and gas company and probably a much richer person, right? ExxonMobil CEO, Rex Tillerson, appeared at a town council meeting in Bartonville, Texas the other day to protest and to try to stop a tower being built as part of a fracking operation near his estate. And he's part of a lawsuit that contends that the fracking operation would make a noise nuisance and traffic hazards, and trucks would be all over the streets hauling water, pumping water. And what's to become of his 83-acre horse farm, which is right there? And so what's fascinating is here's a guy whose company goes around doing this to other people all the time, and now someone is doing it to him, and he's crying, foul! You're lowering my property values. You are interfering with my pleasure in my life and in my domicile, and surely that cannot be legal. I have no rights here? There are no zoning laws? You mean you people can just stick this crap wherever you want it? So there's something particularly, I don't know, pick your word, funny, ironic, about the CEO of ExxonMobil being part of a lawsuit to stop construction of a water tower. That's all it is. It's not as bad as what it could be. This water tower is used in the fracking process because, you know, fracking takes a lot of water. So water is a big part of it. Obviously, this guy lives in a rich neighborhood. So these rich folks who usually don't have much empathy for little people who get squashed by big corporations every day, all of a sudden they're crying foul. Guess who some of his neighbors are? Remember a guy named Dick Armey? Former House Majority Leader. He is part of the lawsuit as well. So it's a rich little enclave there in Texas. Very rich. But there's something simply wondrous about an ExxonMobil CEO on the other side on this one, feeling like a beleaguered, vulnerable homeowner as a big corporate entity tries to destroy his very way of life. Ansel writes that at Penn State, their main campus, they have trees that create that same cathedral effect. He sent a photo. But this tunnel of trees isn't more than, he figures, about 300 yards long. But that, no. I mean, every once in a while I've seen some that, you know, they're maybe a block long and you could just swoon. They're so beautiful. The problem is American elms really got decimated with these root rotting diseases. The town I grew up in had elms all over the place, and they all went down in my childhood because of Dutch elm disease. Ansel writes that in Penn State you can see saplings that have been planted to replace some of the beauties that have gone down. Why the elms in Central Park somehow survived is all of these diseases that took out so many majestic elms is beyond me. For some reason, Ansel, I can't download your picture. It's not coming. I'll trust that it's beautiful. Tell you what, let me get a break in here. When we come back, we will meet Erin McClellan, who has given herself a daunting task. Boy, I wish her well. She wants to unseat freshman congressman. He is a freshman, isn't he? I think. Keith Rothfus. Stay tuned.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
Pittsburgh City Paper's annual money issue is available now. Pick up one today for a unique look at the financial issues in the region. Plus, this week's Pittsburgh City Paper includes our popular education pullout guide, Decisions for the Future. Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com, your smartphone at citypapermobile.com, and at the iPhone App Store and Google Play.
Moments in Black History, brought to you by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.
The first independent African-American owned bank, Capital Savings Bank, was founded in 1888 in Washington, D.C. The bank existed for 16 years, beginning with $6,000 in capital and increasing to $50,000. In the South, the first independent African-American owned bank, Alabama Penny Savings Bank, was established in 1890. Throughout the last century, several black-owned banks have come into existence, some of them able to survive, others having to close due to insufficient capital. By 1993, black-owned banks, insurance companies, and savings and loans boasted total assets of $4.2 billion. Today, most black-owned banks are located in inner-city areas where they can better serve the black community.
I've seen too many of my neighbors affected by stroke, but Highmark is helping us change that by sponsoring our community stroke programs. Caring isn't new for Highmark. I know. I've been a member for 40 years. I'm Jerry Ann Allen, and I'm better with Blue.
We're reinventing affordable health care by keeping the places we call home healthy. It's why our communities are better with Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield is an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, subject to the terms of your benefit plan.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Yes, here is Lynn Cullen back with you. And do you want to wear those? Yeah. You sure it won't make you crazy?
Nope.
Listening to my dulcet tones directly feeding into your ear?
Not in the slightest.
Wow, you're a tough broad. All right. Get a little closer to me, babe.
Ooh, all right.
No, I'm just looking over there, and I want everybody to see you. God, I'll tell you, you're easier on the eyes than Rothfus. Jesus. Now, you see,
just a little.
No, I couldn't say that if I were a man.
No.
No, you couldn't say that.
No, actually, I think you can. I think people say that stuff all the time.
I mean, ugh. You know, when I said you were coming in, and I said, has he just served one term?
Yes.
I thought. So he's a freshman, and we don't want him to get to sophomore.
That's right.
That's right. We want to show Keith the door.
That's right.
And not only that, you can say McClelland a lot easier than you can say Rothfus. Because every time you try to say Rothfus, you usually spit on anybody who's anywhere near you, or you have the danger of strangling on your own tongue. Okay, we'll be serious.
No, I'm actually enjoying this part.
So, okay, here's my first question. What the hell got into you? I mean, why? You know, I'd like to see the guy gone, too. Now, I don't live in that district, but you actually thought to yourself, you know what? I'm going to try to get this guy out of here, and I'm going to put myself on the line. What were you thinking?
Well, it wasn't just about one particular person. It was more about what you see generally going on in Washington and how we've solved problems and
or
this
don't.
Or don't. Yeah, exactly. And this particular person really epitomizes what I believe is the worst aspects of problem solving in Washington. So he happened to personify some of the things that I really don't agree with, that don't fit into my background or how I grew up or any of the values that I had. And to see him get into that seat was frustrating. But it was more about a lot of the ideas and the ideology he brings to the table.
You know, a lot of people feel that way, as I was saying. I mean,
Sure.
I do, but I don't put myself out there. So what were you doing before you put yourself out there? Tell us about you.
I was working in healthcare. That's what I've always done. My mom was a registered nurse. My great-grandmother was a registered nurse back in the day when women didn't really work, and she worked a full-time job and raised 10 kids. So all the women in my family went into healthcare, and that's what I did too.
And you're in healthcare in what capacity?
I started out just working in drug and alcohol and behavioral health as a counselor and worked my way up. What prompted me to get into the policy end of healthcare was in this very building. The Pittsburgh Regional Healthcare Initiative is, I believe, still in here, but they were in here about 10 years ago. And that was the organization that Paul O'Neill, the former Treasury Secretary, worked with. And they were doing a lot of process improvement in here. And I learned under them through the course of a year. But I've always loved healthcare. Like I said, my mom was a nurse, and, she was always messing with our health and making sure that we were doing well. And that was always a big concern. And it was something that was really drilled into us, even working full time. She always had a home cooked meal on the table and said, oh, it's absolutely important that you're not eating out and you're eating at home. And she even was very adamant about us all sitting down at the table together and talking. So that healthcare sort of background that she had was something that infiltrated my family and became a big part of our family values, the idea of interacting in a way that promoted good mental health and good spiritual health as well as good physical health.
Wow. Sounds like a good family.
Yeah.
Did you grow up? You grew up here?
I grew up
in the district.
I did. I grew up in the district. I went to high school at St. Joe's in Natrona Heights, and I'm still in that town. That's where I've been. That's where my husband went to high school and where he grew up as well. So we didn't make it very far.
What is it about people from around here? Nobody goes anywhere. I mean, yeah.
Because it's great. Where's there to go? I love it here.
Because I know. I came here from Wisconsin, and I did not expect to stay long, but yeah.
Sure.
So 30 plus years later, here I am. I know, it's true. There's something very seductive.
It really is.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so you're just a regular small town girl from a wonderful family.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you don't like what's going on in Washington, and you see Keith Rothfus, who is the current representative of this district, as being part of the problem and not part of the solution.
Very much so.
Well, but don't you get the sense that the people who elected him like what he's doing there?
No.
That the whole idea was to go there and essentially be a wall, a no-sayer?
Sure. No, I think he and his Tea Party friends have really sold the American people a bill of goods that is just pure snake oil. When you look at what they're selling you the idea of not solving our problems, but being angry and being frustrated and blame. That's what they're selling you. And when you come from a psychology background like I do, you know that that's the easy sell. It's much easier to engage the part of people's brain that makes them angry and defensive because that's more of an animalistic instinct.
Let me tell you, I have to, in my business, talk radio.
Oh, yeah.
We figured all that out long ago.
Sure.
Because that's what drives this stuff, too.
Sure.
Nothing is easier.
Yeah.
No button is easier to push
than
the anger button. And you know what's right behind it? The fear button.
Yes.
And they go really well together. All you got to do is ratchet up the anger and fear.
Sure.
And you will be able to sort of
bring people
steer people where you want them to go.
Yeah.
It is such a cynical strategy.
Sure.
It's just, and you wonder, don't these people get a little tired of being in a constant state of outrage?
You know what? I don't think they do because it's just much easier than actually creating solutions and thinking. And it's really hard. And I'm doing this right now, and I can tell you it's really hard to go out there and to sit down with everyday people who are struggling, who have lost jobs, who aren't making the bills at the end of the month, who don't have good quality health care and might have a sick family member, and to tell them that you're going to solve their problems. That is very difficult. It's much easier to sit across from those people who are suffering and who are really struggling to make it on a day-to-day basis and say, yeah, this is what's wrong with you. Well, this is the guy you blame for it. And walk away with that.
It's all Obama's fault.
Absolutely. And that's what they're selling. And when you look at the problems we're facing, I don't really care how you feel about President Obama. The fact is the biggest problems we have been here for decades. Some of them are 70 years in the making. They're suffering from 70 years worth of neglect. So to pretend that a lot of the problems that we have right now are the result of this president or even the last president or the one before is completely absurd. That shows a very superficial understanding of what we're experiencing. And I think that it's been way too many years of passing the buck. And that's why my generation has become the first to inherit a world worse off than their parents. And that is just, it's just not appropriate. And it's not what this country was founded on. And that's really what I think this needs to be about, is we have a lot of people trying to sell out my generation and my son's generation and someday my grandchildren's generation so they can help the upper 1% and pretend that that's going to fuel the economic infrastructure of this economy. economy, and it's not.
Wait a minute. You mean you don't believe in trickle-down?
I'm still waiting for the trickle. How's that working for you? It's more of like a slow ooze, I think.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Yeah, no. Every once in a while I feel a little something. I don't know. No, I don't think that did work.
No, it didn't work, and it's not going to work.
No.
But we keep pitching it, don't we?
Isn't it odd that the Republican Party thinks that if they just keep those few folks happy,
sure,
and then keep pointing the finger of fear and outrage, someplace else, but it has worked pretty well for them.
Well, yeah, it's sort of it's very this art of distraction and the theater of the absurd, and it gets people to look over here while they're doing this over here, and then you don't have to explain anything to anybody. You don't have to talk about the tough decisions we need to make or the problems that we have, and talk about really great solutions to the root cause of those problems. You can just tell people who's to blame and say, well, I'm mad at this person and you should be mad at them too, and let's not solve any problems. Let's just blame it on a human being or a party or a PAC or however you want to attribute blame. But it's not solving anything at the end of the day.
So we're talking about an election. How many months away?
The primary's in May, and then November's the general.
Okay. You have a primary opponent?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Shows how much homework I do. Okay, so is that where you're focused now in the primary? I guess you should.
Well, obviously we have to win a primary election, but our focus, it will not change from now to the general, because the reason I'm in this race, the things that I believe in aren't going to change.
Have you ever run for political office before?
No, I haven't.
Gee. You're audacious then.
Absolutely. I've always been.
Is that considered, but is the fact that you have never run before, I know you're going to say it's not a detriment. In fact, it's a positive, I bet.
Well, it depends on who you ask. I'm sure some people look at a young female candidate who's, run a business, grew up in this area, worked under a former Treasury Secretary, and did work for the Office of National Drug Control Policy, and says she's not qualified. And they'll look at somebody else who's been an attorney for 20 years and say, oh, but that person is qualified. What are the qualifications to be a representative in the United States Congress? I think you have to have an understanding of the people that you represent. I think you have to be smart. I think you have to work hard, and you have to come to the steps with solutions. That's what I think, and I think that's what makes you qualified.
Okay. Jeez. All right. Wait, I'm just checking on the time. To see how we're doing. Okay. So I still want to find out a little bit more about you. Did you say you were a business person?
Yes.
What business?
I started a healthcare agency about 7 years ago. I was a little frustrated with how things like drug and alcohol and mental health and women's health are being treated in the current medical process. So I started my own program, and it's called ortho-molecular medicine. And what that means is we actually do testing so we can find the root cause of the problem. Ortho-molecular means the right molecule. And what I was seeing addicts who are already using large quantities of drugs, and then the treatment facilities were putting more drugs into their body. Mm-hmm. And it didn't seem to be really helping them. They didn't seem to be healthier. They may have been off drugs, but they weren't healthier. They weren't feeling good. They weren't happy. And the same thing with the mental health patients that I worked with. While, the drugs that they were put on were helpful, and a lot of times are necessary. I'm not against that. But I think that there's more to it. I think there's other things that we need to look at as far as what's going on. And those drugs do damage to the body when you're using a lot of illicit substances. And we need to fix that. So I actually started doing a lot of research on some of the things that are going on throughout the world and some of the most advanced science in addiction recovery and mental health recovery. And I found these models, and I really wanted to do it. So I worked really hard for a year, understood it, interviewed people from all over the world about what they were doing, did a ton of research, and started this program myself. Everybody in my industry said that you would never get it licensed in the state of Pennsylvania, and I did. At 32 years old, that's what I did, and I'm very excited about it. We just brought in a $500,000 grant for my business, so I'm really excited. That's going to allow us to give a lot more services to people in the community who can't afford them or whose health care has cut off drug and alcohol or behavioral health services, which is a very big problem right now. We're seeing a lot of the health insurance companies cut those benefits to people, and if you look look at our drug problem, it's astronomically expensive, and it just destroys families. So we need to start really focusing on that. It's a $600 billion a year problem. And worse yet, when it comes into a family, it's really hard to overcome, and it can very easily just bring that whole family down.
Well, I am somebody who believes fervently that the so-called war on drugs has done more damage than it's done good, that it has incarcerated unbelievable numbers of people, destroyed families.
Sure.
When a medical... you don't need to put someone in jail if they're addicted. You need to get them off the drug.
Yeah, absolutely.
So would you agree that that generalized criminalization is a bad idea?
I think that we over-criminalize use and under-criminalize distribution. That's what I think. I think that you have drug users and drug dealers getting very similar penalties under the law, and that's not appropriate. Incarcerating somebody, especially you get a mother with 3 children and incarcerating her for 6 months for a dime bag makes absolutely no sense. And then it leaves maybe 3 children without a mother and without an income, and that is completely counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish. Yes, I'm all for behavior modification and the rules that go along with that. But when you're looking at behavior modification and you look at something like drug issues, you're looking at somebody who is desperately trying to solve a problem. Now, they may be solving it in a very dysfunctional way, but they're still trying to solve a problem, and this is the only option that they see facing them. We need to give them better options and better choices, and we need to educate them and get them to understand why these drugs are hurting their body, what has happened to their body, that is the only solution that they see. And once you've worked with drug and alcohol addiction for 17 years like I have, you really start to understand the human capacity of it and the dynamics there.
Do you think if we took all the people that are mentally ill and or drug involved out of the jails, that there'd be anybody left? I mean, it just seems like our jails now are filled with people who require treatment, but not incarceration.
Sure. Yeah. So the last numbers I heard, and I'm not sure if this is the most recent numbers, but last I heard was about 85% of the people that are incarcerated are there for drug-related nonviolent crime.
It's not only insane; it's cost.
It's very expensive.
It's ridiculous.
It's very expensive.
It is stupid. But this is, again, what comes from sowing fear and rage. I'm going to put him in jail and throw away the key. Those guys win all the time.
Sure. And what's interesting is there's a lot of parts of this district in particular that are really, really struggling with this issue. If you look at Westmoreland County, they don't have an inpatient facility right now to put people into. So
for drug treatment?
No, they don't.
In the entire county?
In the entire county, no. They don't have an inpatient treatment facility. So they're doing everything on an outpatient basis, which is not very effective. In Johnstown, they're having a huge problem down there, and they're getting a lot of drugs coming in from the East Coast and Philly. And the issue that they're having is a lot of their vets are becoming addicted, so they're implementing a veterans court program, but they're really not getting the support that they need, and it's just drowning their elected officials and their municipalities and their first responders. And when I'm talking to people throughout this whole district, whether it be from Beaver County down across the top of Allegheny into Westmoreland and Cambria County and where Johnstown is, you hear the same thing. When I sit down with an elected official, such as a county commissioner, and I start talking about my background. And of course, I'm jumping to my education, and I'm jumping to work with a Treasury Secretary. And the first thing they grab onto is, wait a second, you worked in drug and alcohol? And I said, yes. And they say, how do we fix that? Because that is what's killing our municipalities. At the local level, that is what is destroying them, because all their resources are going to address this drug problem. And we have elected officials at the federal level, like Keith Rothfus, who basically, in an article in the Johnstown Tribune-Democrat, when asked about this issue, compared people who are suffering from drug and alcohol addiction to home invaders. That is his perception of drug and alcohol addiction, is that these are home invasions. And that was all he had to offer. This is the problem with our federal government.
So he is part of that.
He's very much part of that punitive
problem.
Yes. Judgment, anger, blame, lock them up, throw away the key, and then that'll solve the problem. Now, it's a problem that costs us $600 billion a year, so I think it's rather interesting.
Well, it also hasn't worked. And
it's completely ineffective. Exactly.
Well, Congressman.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. What an original idea. Lock people up and throw away the key because...
Exactly right.
Yeah, that was how he saw it. And that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with elected officials who really have no connection to the communities they're representing. And that's exactly what we're dealing with here.
Now, you're, as you were talking about all the counties that are in your district.
Yes.
Is that a bizarro kind of a district? Is that a gerrymander?
It is a gerrymander.
I was trying because you were saying this and this, and I was trying to. I mean, I'm not good at geography, but all of a sudden I was like, where really? Where's it?
What I'll give you just a quick 60-second history. So you had two districts, both had Democrats in office.
Yeah.
And one was Congressman Kritz, one was Congressman Altmaier.
Well, and Johnstown, if we think about it, used to be, of course, Murtha.
Sure.
So that was a huge Democratic district. Then Kritz.
And
then the other Democratic district was
the 4th Congressional District, and that was Congressman Altmaier's district, and that was the North Hills of Allegheny County and Beaver County. They merged those two districts together, melon-balled out all of the highly Democratic areas like Greensburg and New Kensington and those areas, and merged them together and forced those two congressmen to run against each other. So you had these two machines running against each other. It was a pretty rough primary, and so the winner of that went into a general election after a really, really awful primary, and that allowed one of the most extreme members of the Tea Party to get elected inside the confines of a Democratic stronghold.
Stop and think about that.
Yeah.
So these people generally who are now represented by Rothfus, most of them were represented, or all of them?
Close to 70% had been represented by Jason Altmaier at one time, and the other 30+% were represented by Congressman Kritz, and then prior to that, Congressman Murtha.
Huh. But so it would seem that a Democrat could win this.
Absolutely. But not just any Democrat. When you look at it, it is difficult for a Democrat because there are different cultures here. You're dealing with very different worldviews. The problems are the same, though. The economic issues are the same. It's just some slight cultural differences.
Are you talking about guns? Are you talking about social?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about economics. I'm talking about economics. When you go down to Johnstown, they need a pro-growth strategy. They've suffered from a lot of mills closing, the deterioration of their defense infrastructure that they had down there. They need jobs, and they need business-minded people that are going to be able to come down there, do some analysis on what's going on, and decide what kind of businesses are going to work. We need to rebuild Johnstown. We need to make it what we know it can be. There's hardworking people down there. They want their town to be great. They love it. And they're willing to listen to anybody who's going to come down and say, hey, I have an idea. So I think if you can go down there as somebody who's started businesses, who's brought in venture capital, who knows how to assess what people need, that works. But then if you go to Murraysville in Northern Allegheny, these are business people. These are small business people. And you need to be able to talk to them about what's going on with healthcare. You need to be able to talk about what's going on Wall Street. That's what they want to talk about. And then when you go up into Beaver County and Lawrence County, the economic issues there are the unions and the loss in healthcare. You're seeing closures up there. You're seeing issues with the unions who are fighting. The nurses are fighting a lot of issues in their workplace up there. So if you can talk healthcare and that economic aspect in Beaver, if you can talk real hardcore business principles, get into some Wall Street stuff in Allegheny and Westmoreland, and then you can go down into Johnstown and talk about growth, then you can win this district. And that's why this district was made for me. When they gerrymandered in Harrisburg, they didn't see me coming. I can assure you of that.
Erin McClelland, ladies and gentlemen. Sure sounds like she's ready for prime time. Tell you what, if you want to get a question in here, if you don't think I'm asking the proper questions, which is certainly possible, come on in. You can call. Phone number 316-3381. You can email them to me, lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Quick break, and we'll be back with Erin McClelland.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Confusion over someone or have sudden...
Have you ever had sudden confusion, trouble speaking, or understanding someone?
It could be one of the 5 signs of stroke.
Sudden weakness or numbness of the face, arm, or leg.
Sudden trouble with vision in one or both eyes.
Suddenly having trouble walking or difficulty with balance.
Or a sudden intense headache that comes out of nowhere.
Don't wait. Call 911 immediately.
Time lost is brain lost.
Find out more at powertoendstroke.org. Brought to you by the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association, and the Ad Council.
BergBargains.com. Log on today for exclusive bargains from your favorite local restaurants like Perrytown Draft House, Jerome Bettis Grill, Verde, Hokkaido, and the Pittsburgh Grill downtown. Plus discount tickets to the Improv Comedy Club. Sign up for the weekly email update for your chance to win a $100 gift card from this weekly spa. The all-new BergBargains.com. Pittsburgh's best bargains. BergBargains.com.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay. Are we back? Oh, we are back. Good heavens, what happened? We are back. Okay, so I was... You didn't have to do that.
That's all right.
Oh, gosh.
I don't want your viewers,
I was telling
going
Aaron,
blind.
I said, don't wear that on. It's beautiful, but don't wear it on TV because the TV can't handle herringbone.
And I reminded her, I thought this was a radio show. I'm lucky. She's lucky I didn't show up in my pajamas.
It's true, but that's, I mean, most people are probably listening. I don't have a sense of how many people watch. I think
Sure.
It's not like it's not like much is moving here. It's not, whatever. So Erin McClelland got to get through a primary coming up in a few months. And then she wants to take on the congressman.
Sure.
Keith Rothfus. So you're mentioning Johnstown and all these other places.
Sure.
And all these things that are wrong. And a lot of the areas you do talk about, you think, oh, God, they're economically struggling areas
Sure.
here. Jeez. Hasn't he done anything in 2 years?
No.
Oh, come on.
Well, he did things. Okay, well, you want to know what he did? I'll give you the laundry list. He signed the Americans for Tax Reform Pledge.
What's that?
That's the Grover Norquist pledge that says that you will under no circumstances ever raise a tax. And I'm sorry, but I think that's dereliction of duty. And it's saying,
so
I'm going to make...
Pledge, wait. He signed a pledge to
Yes.
Grover Norquist, who...
doesn't live in the district.
Doesn't live in the district. And wait, he took an oath to serve the people.
Sure. And then he signed the tax pledge. Yes.
Really, anybody who signs that thing, they sign it because they're scared.
If you sign any pledge, I don't care what you're pledging. You can't ideologically say, I'm going to completely take this off the table no matter what. I mean, this is an economic issue.
Exactly.
Where we're looking at revenue and expenses. And to say, I am never going to consider this option under any circumstances, regardless of whether we go to war or what we need or how it affects our children's future, I'm going to make this cowardly ideological decision every time because I'm not going to make the tough decisions I was elected to make. I'm sorry. I have a real problem with that. And that's what he did the day after he was elected. Okay, and that's when I decided to run. After that, he voted against the Violence Against Women Act. He voted...
What ground? I shouldn't...
It was unconstitutional. That's what he said.
It had already been passed. The Violence Against Women, it was just a re-upping of it,
yes.
wasn't it? Wait a minute. How could it be unconstitutional?
He's the lawyer. You'll have to ask him. But apparently, all those years that was in play, it was unconstitutional.
All right. What else is it?
He voted against hurricane relief for the hurricane victims.
Well, hurricanes don't come around here. We don't care.
Well, you could tell that to people in Johnstown where they experienced the greatest flood in American history. I don't think they feel that way.
And on what grounds did he do that?
They didn't have enough revenue to pay for it. This is the guy that signed the tax reform pledge.
If a tornado leveled Johnstown,
yes.
he would understand then if other places, other Congress people said, I'm sorry, we can't send any relief.
He would probably vote against it himself. I don't know. But we got contributions from New York based on that. They were so angry at him. Because I think that when you look at health and safety, when you're an elected official in the federal government, health and safety has to be first. That's where it has to start. The health and safety of the American people is your primary responsibility. And the minute that you put that aside because of money, and you can't rationally sit down and have a discussion about, okay, let's do this, but then let's find a way to pay for it afterwards. But these people needed help, and he turned his back on them.
Okay. What else is Congressman Rothfus done?
One of the big issues that we hear a lot about is the VA system. There's a big struggle with that, and they're having a lot of problems. And in this district alone, there's a lot of veterans. And Mr. Rothfus's answer to that problem was to write a bill that took away bonus pay from all of the VA executives. It was a bill that did not in any way, shape, or form solve the problems in the VA. It didn't result in one veteran getting better service or faster service or more effective, efficient service. It just blamed and penalized. And it pretty much summarized his entire approach to how we need to manage this country. And I mean, he makes me feel like he thinks we're all a bunch of small children that, need to be disciplined because we're looking for our government to make sure that it works effectively and efficiently and takes care of the health and wellness of the American people.
So you see him as an absolute recalcitrant member of that Tea Party bloc in the House of Representatives that has bedeviled even John Boehner?
From a legislative perspective, yes. It's not a personal commentary, but yes, I think what they're pitching is very draconian in nature. Absolutely.
And you find it harmful? Obviously.
I find it more than harmful. I find it completely destructive. It literally is destroy from within. These are people that are running for office on the destruction of the American government, and that is exactly what they're putting into play when they get into office. They are making sure that government doesn't work for people. And I'm sorry, I have a real problem with people. If you hate the U.S. government, that's fine. You have that right, and the First Amendment guarantees you that. Don't run for office. If you don't support drug and alcohol treatment, then don't go work in that institution. I don't understand people who hate government and say they love America, but truly do not love Americans.
So you figure that the only reason that all these government haters are now part of the government is to take it down from the inside.
Yeah, I think if they can eliminate it and make it ineffective, they'll get people angrier and more frustrated, and they'll get more votes. And the more votes they get, the more they win, and the more they'll be able to distribute our money and our power to the upper 1% under the guise that that's going to fuel our economy. And
wasn't it Grover Norquist, who we've mentioned before, who said that what he was all about is making government, squeezing it until it was so small you could drown it in a bathtub?
Oh, I didn't know that he said that. Did he really?
Yes.
Did he say
That's
that?
what he's famous for saying.
That's horrible.
Okay, so
what terrible imagery. Wow.
Well, but that's what. Okay. I did take a second break, right? Yeah. This is short-term memory loss, result of aging and other things. Okay, so. God, so you sound like a feisty person.
Well, I'm one of those feisty Irish women.
You are?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, that district elected a woman before.
Melissa Hart, yes, they did, in the 4th, absolutely.
All right, in the 4th.
In the 4th congressional district, the old Altmaier district.
Speaks, and Altmaier had to be a very sort of conservative in many ways, Democrat, to pull off his, it seems to me.
Sure.
I mean, so even though we said that was a Democratic district, I'm reminded now of her, Melissa.
Sure.
So you seem pretty liberal. How you gonna?
I am a pragmatist top to bottom. I look at data, I look at numbers, I look at the problems we have, I find the root cause, and I solve it. It just so happens that some of the math works out in a way that maybe people on certain side of the aisle like it. But the fact is we have to start looking at numbers, we have to start looking at data and making our decisions that way and solving problems at root cause, regardless of which side of the aisle we're on. And that we've got to start doing that. And I don't think that the people that are running around saying they're, quote, fiscal conservatives are in any way, shape, or form fiscally conservative, because some of the things that they're doing are actually perpetuating the problems we've been trying to deal with for 70 years and making them worse.
Okay. Chuck writes, to tie this to our earlier conversation before you were here, how does Erin feel about gas wells and fracking? This is a big issue in her district, and the state is not properly regulating the industry. How can she help?
Sure. Yeah, it is. It's a big issue. It's right now it's a state issue, so it's not a policy point that the federal government is really engaged in. But from my perspective, just in what works in the district, the Center for Sustainable Shale Development is a wonderful group. It's half environmentalists, half gas companies, and they came together. And it was, I think, from what I've heard, a little tempestuous at first, but they came together and created 15 standards for drilling, and the environmentalists agreed to it. The gas companies agreed to it. And one of those standards was to work toward using continuous improvement strategies, zero contamination of water, air, and ground, as well as some other great standards. So I'm supporting their standards. I love the work that they're doing. The environmentalists involved love it, and they're advocating for it. Hopefully they'll come up with some sort of certification process so that when people are dealing with somebody coming in and fracking in their property, they'll be able to say, are you CSSD certified? Are you maintaining these standards? Are you guaranteeing full accountability? That's what I want to see happen with that industry.
Okay. I asked you off air about this. I was still trying to flesh out your family.
Sure.
Because it sounds like such a nice crowd. How many siblings you have?
I have two.
You have two siblings? Mm-hmm. Are they still around here too?
Yes.
I'm telling you, what is it with these? They don't go anywhere.
Sure.
They just stay home. So you mentioned your mom is working in healthcare. Your
yes.
father?
My father was a lineman at Duquesne Light. He just retired after 38 years and he was in the IBEW his entire career and was very active. And he did a lot of community service work as part of his work with the unions. And I did a lot with him. We would go and do things with the Special Olympics and the United Way. And I even worked for the United Way for some time based on the work that my dad had done. So I learned a lot about community service working through those organizations. And that all started with his union. So I identified with them a great deal. I identified with the idea of the brotherhood and the sisterhood that they presented. And even though I never held a union card, I really felt very at home with that organization and similar organizations. And I feel that I'm one of labor's children. And even though I've never held a card, labor's children have benefited. And I've personally benefited from 4 generations of organized labor. My great-grandfather was an organizer in what they called Black Valley, which is what we know now as the Allakiski Valley. And that's where a great woman named Fanny Sellens, who's my personal hero, was brought in by the mine workers to organize. And she was shot and killed by the police down there back when the police were owned by, big corporations.
We talking about what, early 1900s?
Yeah, about 1919, I think she died, fighting for organization. And they were fighting for just basic family values, food, water, healthcare, a normal functional work day, a normal functional work week. Those are the original family values. Okay,
which brings me to talking about family values and talking about raising the minimum wage. Mm-hmm. Where you stand on that?
I think it's a basic human issue. Absolutely. Costs are going up. We need to make sure that every person that's working makes a good wage, and I think raising the minimum wage is absolutely essential to that.
A no-brainer?
Yeah, absolutely.
A no-brainer. That's what I think too. What about on foreign policy issues? I mean, surely you feel a little out of sorts about that kind of thing? What are you going to do?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to be president of the United States, so I won't be setting foreign policy. But what we do need is leaders that understand, again, solving our problems at their root cause. And I think that what we've stepped away from is we are micromanaging our foreign policy in pieces instead of coming up with an overarching policy as far as what are our goals, what are we trying to accomplish. We keep micromanaging these instances or these occurrences overseas, and what we end up doing sometimes is creating a bigger mess than we started with. And I don't think we're really learning through that process. It doesn't seem like we are. And that's what's frustrating me. There's things that we can do in other countries that are struggling or are dealing with civil unrest or straight up war. And, there's a role that we can play, but I think that we're all over the place on that that one. And that's what's frustrating me is lack of an overarching policy for what we want to accomplish. How much can we realistically accomplish? We need to have that conversation. And how do we do that in a way that doesn't make a bigger mess than what we started with?
Okay, it's a big question. We don't have a lot of time. You've said your core is on health, centered on health. A big issue that the Republicans are going to run on is health.
Sure.
In the form of the Affordable Care Act.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about that.
Okay, very quickly, this is a financial issue. It's a financially responsible issue. Right now, healthcare is growing at twice the rate of GDP. That is unsustainable. Our healthcare is 2/3 of our biggest financial problem. If you want to solve that problem, we have to have healthcare reform. We have to have healthcare reform that works to eliminate the 300 million medical errors that we have every year that are driving costs through the roof. And that starts with what some of the things they did in the Affordable Care Act. Now, there's a lot of improvement that needs done with this bill, but going back to keeping healthcare costs growing at twice the rate of GDP and allowing 300 million medical errors every year and saying that there's not a problem is ludicrous. I'm sorry, but the answer that my opponent and many of the Tea Party people and even the Republicans are putting out there is tort reform. Their idea to solve 300 million medical errors every year is to change the way somebody sues after you've killed them. I will never comprehend that mentality. I have no idea who came up with that or what focus group created it, but that is absolutely, completely absurd. I will never understand it. We have to stop how hospitals are making mistakes and why they're making mistakes, get to the root cause of the problem. And that's something that I have been aggressively trained in, so I can do that.
You're listening to Aaron McClellan, who wants to run for Congress of the... What's the
is number? Running for Congress.
Oh, I'm sorry. Man, you're impressive.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I don't even know what number that district is.
It's the 12th.
The 12th!
It's the mysterious 12th.
That's actually Keith Rothfus in the 12th. That's who's currently there.
Yes, he is.
Aaron wants to be there instead. You're impressive.
Well, thank you.
I'm really thrilled. Tomorrow, I know you're going to be there's an event at the Mendelson Gallery.
There is, yes. We're having an event there.
Mendelson Gallery, Ellsworth Avenue in Shadyside. Actually, I hang out there a little bit myself.
It's a great place. I saw it the other day. It's beautiful. What an amazing place. Steve's done a great job there.
Yeah, he has. So that is anybody invited to that? Is that you got to...
absolutely.
If you want to meet her more, maybe give a little money.
Absolutely. Hey, that would be great. I'd love it.
If you want to give a little money and maybe bend Aaron's ear, that's happening tomorrow at
5:30.
5:30. Okay. Just want to say.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Is there a website or anything that
there is? It's Aaron14.com. You can check out our Facebook page, and our Twitter page is Aaron for PA. So definitely follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Check out the website. There's a lot of great stuff on there. Definitely sign up to volunteer and donate what you can. Thank you.
Aaron14, ERIN 14.com.
That's correct.
I wish I could vote for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It's great.
True pleasure. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, stay warm.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.